Welcome to Uniting the Cults, another episode of Why Is Everybody Stupid? Are you feeling hopeless, anxious, and facing uncertainty? This is a post from the ex-Muslim subreddit that I want to discuss. So, just reading the title, you can see there's psychological issues, hopeless, anxious, and a lot of people see this part, facing uncertainty, as a psychological issue, and maybe that is the case. But it's also an epistemology issue. Epistemology is the study of knowledge. So I'm going to read this post a little bit, and then I want to get into the psychology side of things from some psychology websites that I just found that I think are going to be helpful. So the person asked, how do you find hope and comfort? In the past, I would pray and read the Quran when I'm hopeless, anxious, and facing uncertainty. Obviously, that won't do now because they don't believe that religion anymore. So have you found anything else that works? I'm in desperate need for anything since all my usual psychology methods are not working really. So one thing to notice here is they're thinking of psychology and psychology methods, and they're not thinking of epistemology. The epistemology is more important. Any psychology problems are caused by epistemology problems. So let me clarify all that. Right now I'm just going to talk about the epistemology side of things first. Many people, going at least as far back as Aristotle, so we're talking 2,500 years ago, tried to solve the uncertainty problem in various ways, all of which are the same. What do? They declare that they're 100% certain of some piece of knowledge because of some other piece of foundational knowledge that they're 100% certain of. For Muslims, for Muslim claims, that foundational knowledge is the Quran. But that doesn't solve the uncertainty problem. And what's worse is that it's not even intended to solve the goddamn problem. Instead, it's intended to solve the psychological problem of wanting certainty. It doesn't work because it totally ignores the actual problem, which is the epistemology problem of how to deal with uncertainty. And that problem has already been solved. The solution is called the scientific approach. That's the only way to properly deal with uncertainty. For details on this, see any book by Karl Popper, David Deutsch, or Eli Goldratt, or talk to any physicist. These two people are physicists. This person, he's known as an epistemologist or also a philosopher of science. What he was doing was studying the scientific approach from scientists to try to figure out the difference between science and pseudoscience. And here are two articles I wrote explaining the scientific approach. This first one is written for a general audience. It's kind of short. It's more of a magazine style article. This one is written for a business audience who are familiar with a thing called TOC, or theory of constraints. It's basically this person's, Eli Goldratt's, contribution to the business world, or to Earth, to humans. It is the scientific approach with an angle of applying it to business issues. So let's see. Nobody actually asked any questions. And the person who I replied to in the comments originally about this also didn't ask any questions. So I'm going to now get into what psychologists say about this. There's this phrase that's been coined, intolerance of uncertainty. And this article, or this research, I think it's just an article, they say here, a common factor in the treatment of emotional disorders. So reading this title here, so it's kind of like they're saying this thing, intolerance of uncertainty, which you can see as an epistemology problem compounded with the psychology problem, causing these bigger psychology problems. I'm going to skip ahead to their summary points. So notice what they're defining here. Intolerance of uncertainty is a dispositional characteristic that results from a set of negative beliefs. I would call them false beliefs that are also negative. And that's where the epistemology part is coming in. So it starts with an epistemology problem. And on top of that, it's causing, or at least contributing as a factor to psychology problems, major ones. So it seems to be mainly focusing on worrying about future events and saying it's excessive, more than you should be. And one thing to say about this is heavily influenced by how you were raised. If you were raised in a scenario, I'm going to explain the opposite of this worst case scenario. If you're raised in a scenario where you have freedom and you have control over your life to some degree because your parents are giving you freedom to control your life, the parts you're physically capable of controlling, you would do fine. Well, now let me explain the opposite side. So if you're raised at the extreme other end, if you're raised in a family where you don't have freedom, where whatever plans you want or try to make, they're going to be disrupted by the people who are not giving you any freedom. And you live like that for years and years and years and years, you're going to develop a lot of psychological problems around everything in your life regarding future, events and outcomes. Your entire history has been, you can't plan anything because other people are going to fuck it up. So if you grow up like that for a few decades and then you leave your household and you're on your own, you don't change your mindset all of a sudden. You still have pretty much the same way of thinking, and you're going to have this problem. So when you're raised in a household with no freedom, you're inevitably going to be putting a lot of mental effort into figuring out how to deal with your parents. And so you're going to worry a lot. In the other extreme end, if you're living in a household where you make plans for yourself and then you get to do them and nobody gets in your way, there's a lot less to worry about. And of course, what you're worried about is something that's very, very horrible. Things like getting punished, especially in cases where you didn't know you're going to get punished because it's not like the rules are clearly outlined, very much unlike the way a government works. So I want to explain what this is in a more general context first. So worrying is like being concerned. Being concerned is good. And it doesn't have to involve any negative emotions, and it's not worrying. So as an example, consider a scientist who's made his scientific theory and now he's designing an experiment. He's concerned that the experiment is going to go wrong. So he tries to imagine ways it could go wrong, and he accounts for them. That's the same thing that this is describing, except there's no negative emotions. Now, the difference between the normal concern and worrying is, well, the context. In the case I've been describing, you're living in a household with people who don't give you freedom, and you're concerned about, making plans and them messing them up. And it becomes worry because there's negative emotions involved, and there's negative emotion involved because someone is mistreating you very badly. And it's easy to become excessive because, so let me explain why it wouldn't be excessive for a scientist doing an experiment. The scientist doing an experiment, once he's worked through his ideas on what could go wrong and accounted for them and made a plan, he's done. He can put it away and he can go back to the rest of his life. He may think about it again, but it's actually fun thinking. So I don't know that it makes sense to call it excessive. In this case, we're talking about someone concerned with, the future, making plans, and it's a worry because they're having negative emotions, and the negative emotions are there because someone is badly mistreating them. And it can easily get excessive because of all the you don't want the negative emotions to come. I mean, and for a lot of people, they're already there. And so it's easy to just do it more than you need to, to make the plan and account for all the ways that things can go wrong. It says here, an increase at least the perception of control over future outcomes. And here's the thing, the perception or your knowledge of future outcomes, or your knowledge of your control over future outcomes, is very relevant. That's the part that matters to your psychology, at least. So bringing it to the scientist case, an experiment. Suppose he designed an experiment, went through the process of accounting for ways it could go wrong, and finished, and then later he thinks about it again, thinks about a new thing that could go wrong, thought about it a little bit. Now he has knowledge of that thing, and that knowledge is going to help him potentially change the experiment. Or if not, at least he'll know that he didn't need to change the experiment. The knowledge there matters, not just whether or not you have control. Knowledge of whether or not you have control matters. So this last part, because the potential catastrophic outcomes are relatively low base rate events, individuals often attribute their non-occurrence to preventative worry. And this is a logical mistake known as correlation is causation. These people would do better learning what that logic is and that it's false logic, and learning how to recognize it so that you can then catch it in yourself and then change. Let's see. I put a link in the description for that, for a YouTube video where I discuss correlation is causation, false logic. So, as an example, let's say somebody is turning off or turning on their alarm system before they leave their house, and they do it 3 times. They put in their code, turn on the alarm, put in their code, turn on the alarm, put in their code, turn on the alarm. It only needed it once. Why are they doing it 3 times? Because by going through this process that they've developed of doing it 3 times, they are helping themselves check that they didn't forget to turn it on. It's a little bit similar to, or it's basically the same thing as, let's say you were cooking and then you had to leave the house, you went and did something while you're gone, or let's say you haven't even left yet, but you're walking to the car already, and you think to yourself, wait, did I turn off the oven? I'm not sure. Well, in that case, the appropriate thing to do is to go back and check. And that's kind of what this process is of turning off your alarm 3 times, but it's not really doing it, because it's not like the more accurate, to the equivalent scenario in turning off your alarm is you left your house. Sorry, before you left your house, you turned on the alarm, and now you're already approaching your car, and you think, wait, did I turn off or turn on the alarm? I don't remember. Well, if you don't remember whether you turned it off, and or you kind of remember, but you're not really sure, maybe it was a different day, the appropriate thing to do is go back and check. Now, let's say you've already done that once, and now you go back to the car again. There's no chance you're going to forget again whether you turned it off. So that scenario is fine. But this scenario of turning on your alarm 3 times in series right after each other, where you haven't even left yet, makes no sense, because you didn't lose your memory of having done it the first time, and you didn't lose your memory of having done it the second time. So these actually make sense, like I just described. The one that doesn't make sense is turning off your alarm 3 times in series in a row. It doesn't solve anything in reality. Yeah, something that I think they're missing here is just basic not learning the scientific approach causes all kinds of things like this to not get better. So something I want to point out here is the epistemology problem that I was discussing earlier. Everything is uncertain. There's nothing we can be 100% certain about. So wanting 100% certainty is a fool's errand. It's impossible to achieve. Now, I'm talking about the epistemology problem. It is impossible to gain 100% certainty. What is possible, and this is what is being described here, is it is possible to have a feeling that you're 100% certain, but that's just nonsense. And doing these obsessive compulsive behaviors, like turning off your alarm 3 times, it's, I guess, giving them the feeling that they're 100% certain, but it's not actually doing that. Yeah, this really sucks for people. Is not only are they worrying about external events happening and panicking about that, they're also worrying or panicking about that they might have a panic attack about external events. Yeah, so they're part of why they're panicking about having a panic attack in the future is they don't know what are the things that cause them to have a panic attack. So they can't predict it. That reliably makes it harder to plan things, like if you're planning to go to do some social engagement, but you're also not sure and you might have a panic attack because you don't know what causes your panic attacks. That could cause a panic attack in the moment right now before even going to the social event. Yep. I think this might be overstating things. They have a general problem already of uh, like the example I gave before, correlation is causation. They say they see something happen in someone else, and like they did something, and then the other person responded a certain way. That's a correlation, and then they jump to conclusions about what the cause is, and they don't go through a scientific process to determine what is the actual cause. And this is saying they do that to decrease uncertainty. I don't think they have a goal of decreasing uncertainty there. They're just kind of dumb. If they were a little bit smarter, they wouldn't do it. And by smarter, I mean knowledge of how science works, like not making the correlation is causation mistake. All right, so now to the next article. And a good question to ask is how they got that way. And I think what I was describing earlier is the biggest factor, how you were raised. A lot of people are given a lot of ability to control their lives, through freedom, and a lot of people are not. Yeah, so there needs to be a good mix of planning for the future, but also playing it by ear. And so another way to say this is you plan for the future, but at the same time, you're withholding planning some parts of it because you don't have enough information now. And you wait until you do have the relevant information to then plan the narrower parts that you couldn't do earlier. Normal, meaning a lot of people do it, or maybe they mean okay here. To be a bit uncomfortable with uncertainty. It's incorrect though. You don't like the scientist who doesn't know what's going to happen with the experiment, since you can't know, and that's the point of experiments. That's part of the why we're doing experiments is because we don't know yet. There's tons of uncertainty there, and there's plenty of physicists doing that are not uncomfortable. So the example of the scientist doing an experiment, there's so much uncertainty in everything he's doing. And if you ask physicists, they're not uncomfortable with it. They relish in it. They love it. So the example here of we want to know that the restaurant is going to serve foods we like. If you have the conception that you're going to go to a new restaurant and you don't know if they serve things that you like, but you're also okay with, if you don't like what they serve, then you go to another restaurant, pick another one, then there's no problem. Why would you be uncomfortable? There wouldn't be any uncomfortability because you already have the solution to whatever problem there might be in that kind of problem. If the problem is, oh no, the restaurant might not have what we want, solution, go to another restaurant. This is assuming you have time to do things like that. And if you didn't have time to do things like that, then you make time. Like, you design your life so that you have time. The thing about going to a party, suppose you had the conception, I'm going to go to the party, and yeah, I hope there's going to be people that I know. But even if not, then I will try to talk to new people. And if that doesn't work, or if I don't feel like doing it at the time, then I will just leave. There's nothing uncomfortable there with that mindset. About the boss telling us exactly what he thinks about our work performance. I could see a scenario where someone is worried about losing their job, so that would happen there. But now imagine another scenario where somebody isn't worrying about losing their job because they know they can easily get another one, and it will probably be better than the dumb one they got right now. No uncomfortableness. This knowledge feels more comfortable to us than not knowing. More comfortable. This is like saying there's degrees of comfortableness, but the examples I gave has zero uncomfortableness. So you're not gaining any comfortableness by knowing that the restaurant you're going to go to has the foods you like. So this more comfortable thing doesn't make sense. Yep. Yep. This is making it sound like it's bad. To-do lists are good. It's a way to put shit down so forgetting them won't cause a problem. It's not much different than journaling. Double checking is good. Maybe triple and quadruple checking is dumb. This is goofy logic, because so suppose you're a owner of a business and you're doing this thing of making sure you do everything. Even if you have employees, you let them only do the basic easy stuff, and anything that you're, well, I'm going to say worried about going wrong, you just do it yourself, but that limits your business from growing. And this is a scenario where they're not thinking scientifically. Just imagine whatever task you could be giving to someone else. Let's suppose, since you already know how to do it, you've been doing it for years. Let's say your mistake rate is less than 1%. And then in this hypothetical universe where you give this task to someone else and they're new to it, so of course their mistake rate is going to be high. Let's say it's 20%, and you're disliking the 20% part of it. Well, what you can do is, because they're new, you double check their work so you can catch their mistakes and bring the mistake rate back up to the less than 1%. Another thing you can do is, and in addition, is let them do the work, let them make the mistakes, but then you check it afterwards, after it's already been done, and help them improve. Find out what they did wrong, explain it to them, and then, one mistake at a time, learning from it one mistake at a time, your mistake rate, that employee's mistake rate, will go down from 20% to 15%, and then all the way down to, and it might even get better than you. One reason it could end up being a lower mistake rate than you're able to do is because, well, in a lot of cases, the owner has so many things to do that they can't really put a lot of good enough attention or enough attention to the task, where an employee has less stuff to do and they can put more attention to that task. Except in a lot of cases, this could just make the actual problem worse, because you do eventually have to do it. And by procrastinating, avoiding, that thing is getting worse. It's not always like that, but a lot of cases it is. Yes. Yeah, that's bad. Distraction. Which you can. Actually, everything. The epistemology, the foundational part of this is the epistemology. There's nothing that you can be 100% certain about. There's always the potential for maybe you did something wrong. And the only way you're going to know that you did something wrong is hindsight 2020. Once you learn of a new mistake you made, now you know you did something wrong in the past, but you didn't know before you gained that knowledge. Sounds very simple, and it sounds like a tautology. This is downplaying an actual good thing. You can reduce mistakes by putting in the work to reduce the mistakes. Yes, learn some epistemology. Uh, this is kind of vague, and it kind of makes it sound like fake it till you make it works. It doesn't. But this is plainly true. It's similar to if you're working in a store and your normal reactions is to, when a customer comes in, you maybe you say hello, but you don't smile and you don't converse, and you're just a little bit in a bad mood. If you make a conscious decision to smile, try to talk about something with them, and then let's say they respond in the same way, now you're having a nice conversation, your mood improves. It's similar to that. You change your emotions by behaving differently. I guess that's the whole article. So that's it. If anyone has any questions, please ask in the comments or on Reddit. I'm going to provide all the links here. If you liked this episode, please hit like. Please subscribe to the channel so you see more of this. If it helped you, it's going to help other people. Please make this go viral. Thank you, everyone.